Imagine trusting your life savings to a small-town bank, only to have them freeze every dollar you own. No explanations, no apologies, just locked out. That's exactly what happened to me. And when I found out the reason why, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, because what comes next will leave you stunned. I stood in line at the ATM that afternoon, the sun glaring down on us like it had a personal grudge. My rent money was already calculated in my head. I had replayed the numbers so many times they felt like a prayer: rent, utilities, groceries, and just enough left over to buy the small flowers I placed by my husband's photo every Sunday. That was my ritual. That was my peace. The line behind me stretched down the sidewalk. People shuffled and sighed, some tapping their shoes against the pavement. I ignored the tension pressing against my back and slid my card into the machine. My fingers danced over the keys, muscle memory guiding me. A moment later, the words appeared: transaction declined. At first, I laughed nervously. It had to be a mistake. My paycheck cleared 2 days ago. I tried again, pressing harder this time, as though my frustration might force the machine to behave. But the same words blinked back at me, flashing with cruel finality. Transaction declined. "Are you done yet?" a woman behind me snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. My cheeks burned. I pulled the card out quickly and stepped aside, clutching it like it had betrayed me. I dialed the bank right there on the sidewalk, my hands trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. After 5 minutes of cheerful hold music that mocked my panic, a young man finally answered. His tone was dripping with the kind of arrogance that made me feel like I was inconveniencing him. "Your account has been restricted due to suspicious activity," he said, flatly. Suspicious? My rent, my bills, my groceries, my life, all flagged as suspicious? I begged him to check again, told him I had bills due and no cash left in my purse. He sighed so loudly I could picture him rolling his eyes. "Ma'am, it's company policy," he muttered, before hanging up. I stood frozen in the middle of the street, phone pressed against my ear, dismissed like a child asking for candy. That night, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, staring at the red letters on my overdue rent notice. My landlord had already given me one warning. Another would mean eviction. I dialed the bank again, desperate for a human being with an ounce of compassion. This time, a woman answered. Her voice was sharp, each question meant to wound. Where was my money coming from? Why was I transferring funds so frequently? Did I even understand the seriousness of my suspicious behavior? Every word carried an unspoken insult. She wasn't talking to a person. She was interrogating a problem. When I tried to explain, my voice cracked. I could hear the smirk in hers. And then she whispered the words that branded themselves into me forever. "People like you always think the rules don't apply." People like me. She didn't say it outright, but I knew exactly what she meant. My foreign last name had been a shadow trailing me for years. That night, it caught up. I pleaded with her. Begged even. But the line went dead. She had hung up. The next morning, I tried to buy groceries with the little cash I had left. Bread, milk, and some fruit. Nothing more. At the register, I slid my card and held my breath. The cashier frowned, shook her head. Declined. The man behind me chuckled, loud enough for everyone to hear. My face burned as I abandoned the groceries and walked out empty-handed. My stomach growled the whole way home, but the humiliation was louder. When I reached my door, another envelope waited. Final notice from the utility company. Pay immediately or lose service. My hands shook as I tore it open, my knees giving way until I sat on the floor surrounded by papers that spelled one truth: I was being erased. I pressed my palms to my face, tears seeping through my fingers. I had worked too hard, fought too long to keep my life stable. My late husband's voice came back to me, soft but steady. "You're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone take your dignity." But sitting there, clutching overdue bills I couldn't pay, dignity felt like a memory I'd already lost. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The clerk's laugh replayed in my mind like a cruel lullaby. My fists clenched under the blanket, breath shallow, heart thudding against my ribs. They had locked me out of my money. Locked me out of my stability. locked me out of peace itself. For the first time in years, I felt small, powerless, invisible. But beneath the despair, something stirred. Quiet at first, like embers beneath ash. A low, burning anger that refused to be smothered. I didn't know it then, but that burn would become my weapon. The very thing they thought had broken me would be the spark that turned their empire to ash. They thought I would beg forever. They thought humiliation would silence me. But they forgot one thing: people like me don't stay powerless for long. The morning light seeped through my curtains, but it brought no comfort. My body ached from another sleepless night. The coffee on my table had gone cold hours earlier, untouched, while I sat replaying every cruel word the bank had thrown at me. That's when my sister called. Her voice was gentle but firm, the way only older sisters can manage. She had heard the break in my voice when I spoke to her the night before. "You can't let them do this to you," she said. "They think they're untouchable. But you have to remind them you're not powerless." I wanted to believe her. But the truth was, I felt like nothing more than a child begging at a locked door. Then, later that afternoon, my younger cousin Pavel joined the call. He was just 22, brimming with restless energy, always tinkering with strange apps and websites I could never keep up with. He listened in silence as I explained everything: the declined card, the overdue bills, the bank clerks who mocked me. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing in anger. When I finally stopped, exhausted, Pavel leaned toward the camera. His voice was calm, almost dangerous. "You don't have to fight them the way they expect. Fight them the way they'll never see coming." I frowned, not understanding. What does that even mean? A mischievous smile crept across his face. He grabbed his phone and angled the screen toward me. At first, I thought it was a joke, some strange website written partly in Russian, with clunky English translations scattered across the page. My confusion must have shown because he began explaining. It was a service where you could pay people, just pennies each, to post whatever you wanted on social media. Hundreds of them. Thousands, if you wanted. Real-looking profiles, fake-looking ones, American names, foreign names. A faceless army at your fingertips. I stared at the screen, stunned. You mean I could make people flood the bank's page? Their reviews, their comments, everything. Pavel nodded, his grin widening. Exactly. Imagine them waking up to hundreds of furious posts, complaints, stories. Their reputation crumbles overnight. They'll have no choice but to listen. At first, I laughed. It sounded childish, like throwing rocks at a fortress and expecting it to fall. But as the silence stretched, my laughter faded. Because deep down, I knew how fragile reputations could be. The bank's power wasn't just money. It was the illusion of trust. And I could break that with a single click. Still, fear tugged at me. Isn't this dangerous? What if they find out it was me? Pavel shrugged. $3. That's all it costs to try. And they'll never trace it back. You've got nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. The words stung because they were true. The bank had already stripped me of everything: my money, my peace, my dignity. All that remained was the question: what if this worked? That night, I paced my living room until my legs ached. I told myself it was ridiculous, beneath me, maybe even wrong. But every time I remembered the smirk in that clerk's voice, the humiliation at the grocery store, the coldness of being told, "people like you," something inside me burned hotter. Finally, I opened the site. My hands trembled as I typed. The words poured out like venom I had been holding back for weeks. Sharp, cutting complaints that mirrored exactly how they had treated me, multiplied into dozens of voices. I selected American-looking profiles, added a few from randomized, and hit confirm. The screen flashed. Payment accepted. $3. Less than a cup of coffee. But in that moment, it felt like I had just launched a missile. The next morning, I sat at my computer, heart pounding, afraid to even check. But curiosity won. When the page loaded, my breath caught. The bank's official Facebook was flooded. Hundreds of posts stacked one after another, angry voices shouting into their comment sections. Thieves. Fraud. They locked my money and ruined my life. Some posts were so detailed, so real, I almost believed they were true stories. I had to cover my mouth with both hands, my eyes wide. It worked. The fortress had cracks. And for the first time, I wasn't the one cornered. They were. But then, something I hadn't expected happened. Real customers, people who had nothing to do with my scheme, started adding their voices. They saw the noise and recognized their own pain. One woman wrote that the bank had delayed her mortgage payments. Another man claimed they froze his small business account. The flood I had started turned into a wildfire. The bank panicked. I could feel it, even from miles away. Within hours, they shut down their comment sections. But it was too late. Screenshots had already spread across Twitter. Threads were multiplying. Local bloggers started picking up the story. I imagined the manager logging in that morning, coffee in hand, expecting nothing but routine, only to watch his empire burning in real time. For weeks, they had dismissed me like I was nothing. But now, I was the shadow behind the storm they couldn't stop. And somewhere deep inside, a voice I hadn't heard in years whispered, "You are not powerless anymore." $3. That's all it costs to make them bleed. But storms are unpredictable. And what I unleashed next was far bigger than I ever imagined. The calls started on a Tuesday morning. At first, I ignored them, assuming it was just another telemarketer. But when the same number lit up my phone 5 times in less than an hour, I knew. It was the bank. I let it ring. My palms were sweating, heart hammering so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. I hadn't prepared for this part. I thought maybe they'd notice the chaos, struggle to manage it, then move on. But the reality was unfolding much faster. By noon, the news had spread beyond social media. A local radio host picked it up, reading aloud furious comments that had appeared on the bank's Facebook before they shut it down. He mocked them live on air. "Looks like this place has more skeletons in the closet than customers in line." I laughed so hard I cried. For the first time in weeks, the sound didn't feel hollow. But underneath the laughter was a quivering unease. I had started something far bigger than myself. When I finally answered the phone, the voice on the other end was strained but polite. A manager, introducing himself formally, asking if I had experienced any issues with my account. The words sounded rehearsed, hollow, like he'd repeated them 100 times already. I nearly choked on the irony. Weeks ago, when I begged for help, I was nothing. Now, suddenly, I was important enough for a manager to call personally. I didn't give him what he wanted. My voice was steady when I said, "I've been more than patient. You humiliated me. Now you can deal with the consequences." And I hung up. The silence that followed was electric. For the first time, I wasn't begging. I was dictating. But control is a slippery thing. By that evening, the story had gone regional. A news blog ran the headline, "Local Bank Faces Social Media Firestorm Amid Complaints of Corruption." The article quoted anonymous posts that, though fake, sounded all too believable. And then the real floodgates opened. People I had never met began messaging me privately. Some asked if I was behind the storm. Others wanted to share their own experiences with the bank, stories of overdraft fees they never understood, accounts frozen without explanation, mortgages delayed. It dawned on me then. I had lit the match, but the kindling was always there. The bank's arrogance had left trails of gasoline everywhere. All I did was strike the spark. Still, doubt crept in at night. As I lay awake, the glow of my phone lit up the ceiling. What if someone traced it back to me? What if the bank suspected I was behind it all? The paranoia grew. Every unexpected knock at the door made my chest tighten. I started closing my blinds, whispering when I made calls. My cousin assured me it was impossible to link me to the site, but fear doesn't listen to reason. And yet, every time I saw a new headline, a new thread mocking the bank, the thrill surged through me again. I couldn't stop checking. Refreshing pages became an obsession. Watching them scramble, deny, flail, it was intoxicating. I wasn't powerless anymore. Then came the letter. It arrived 3 days later, an envelope stamped with the bank's logo. My stomach flipped as I held it. I half expected a legal threat, some icy warning about defamation or fraud. But when I opened it, I froze. Inside was a neatly typed apology. "We sincerely regret the inconvenience you have experienced. Your account has been restored, all fees waived." We value you as a customer and hope to rebuild your trust. The paper trembled in my hands. Rebuild my trust. They hadn't even bothered to apologize before. And now, after a storm they couldn't contain, I was suddenly valued. I should have felt relief. But instead, all I felt was a strange hollowness. Because this wasn't just about fixing my account anymore. It was about every sneer, every dismissal, every door slammed in my face. They thought a form letter could erase that? No. The storm had only just begun. 2 days later, the cracks grew deeper. A whistleblower appeared. An employee leaked screenshots of internal emails, management ordering staff to downplay complaints and avoid acknowledging systemic issues. The screenshots went viral within hours. That wasn't me. That was someone inside. I realized then that the bank wasn't just fighting me. They were fighting themselves. And the cracks weren't closing, they were widening. I wanted them to suffer like I had suffered. But I hadn't planned for the storm to spread beyond my control. And what came next was a twist even I couldn't predict. The message came late at night, hidden in my inbox between spam and newsletters I never signed up for. The subject line was simple: I know what you did. My blood went cold. For a moment I thought the bank had found me, that my game was over. My fingers hovered over the delete button, but curiosity pulled me in. The email wasn't a threat. It was a confession. I work at the bank. I saw how they treated you. What happened wasn't an accident. Your account was flagged because of your last name. They didn't want to admit it, but I've read the internal memos. They were profiling you. Attached were screenshots, proof of everything I'd suspected but never been able to confirm. Notes about unverified foreign accounts, reminders to flag unusual surnames for further review. And next to my name, circled in red, was the word, pending. I stared at the screen, heart racing. The storm I had started wasn't just justified, it was righteous. The emails kept coming. The whistleblower never gave a name, only signed as a. They wrote about staff being told to keep customers waiting, about executives laughing in closed meetings, about how my complaint had been brushed aside deliberately. And then came the line that changed everything. They're preparing to blame this on a system error. But I can make sure the truth comes out. I leaned back in my chair, trembling. For weeks, I had been one person fighting an institution. Now, suddenly, I had someone on the inside, a ghost in their machine, willing to burn the house down from within. But with that power came risk. If I worked with this person, I'd be in deeper than ever. No plausible deniability. No walking away clean. Still, I couldn't resist. We started small. A leaked memo here, a screenshot there. Every piece A sent me, I released carefully, feeding the fire one spark at a time. And every time, the internet devoured it. Soon, journalists weren't just mocking the bank, they were investigating it. Articles appeared about discriminatory practices, about hidden fees and shady dealings. Former customers lined up to share their stories. The narrative had shifted. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. And God, it felt powerful. But I wasn't careful. One night, they sent me a photo of a document, so sensitive it nearly burned my screen. A spreadsheet of names, dates, and balances. Proof that the bank had been quietly holding customer funds, delaying transfers, skimming interest. This could ruin them, I wrote. It was true. But it could also ruin me. If I leaked it, I wouldn't just be the spark anymore. I'd be the inferno. For the first time, I hesitated. Meanwhile, the bank was scrambling. They issued public statements, staged damage control, even fired a few low-level employees to make it look like they were fixing the problem. But it was too late. The more they tried to patch the cracks, the more the dam broke. Their own staff was bleeding secrets, their reputation shredded piece by piece. I had wanted them to beg. And now, they were crawling. But part of me wondered, how much further could I push before I lost control completely? Then came the call. It wasn't the manager this time. It was a lawyer. Her voice was sharp, professional, dripping with veiled threat. "We are aware," she said, "that confidential information has been circulated from inside our institution. This activity is criminal. If you know anything about it, now is the time to come forward." My throat tightened. They didn't know it was me, but they were circling closer. I told myself to back off, to stop, to let the storm play out on its own. But the truth was I couldn't. I was addicted. Every headline, every furious post, every new leak from it was fuel. And I wanted the fire to keep burning. One night, A sent me a final message. They know. I can't keep this up much longer. If they trace me, I'm finished. But there's one last file. It's everything. The fraud, the discrimination, the cover-ups. If you release it, they'll never recover. My fingers hovered over the download link. The choice weighed heavy, end this now, or light the match that would burn them to ash. The file sat on my desktop, its icon glowing like a warning light. Inside it was the entire skeleton of the bank's corruption, names, transactions, secret memos. Proof they had been freezing accounts, delaying payments, targeting customers with foreign profiles, all while lining their pockets with stolen interest. It wasn't just evidence. It was a guillotine. If I dropped this file, the bank would never recover. Lawsuits would bury them. Executives would crawl into hiding. Customers would flee in waves. But once it was out there would be no taking it back. No deniability. No escape. I stared at it for hours, my heart pounding like a war drum. I thought of the clerk who smirked at me, the manager who dismissed me, the voices on the phone who made me feel small, foreign, unworthy. I thought of every door slammed in my face, every sneer that said, "You don't belong here." They had humiliated me, broken me, stripped me of my dignity. And now the sword was in my hand. I sent it. Not to the journalists this time. Not to social media. I uploaded it to a public drive, shared it anonymously in hundreds of forums, and let the internet devour it. And it did. The explosion was instant. Within hours, news outlets were ablaze. Anchors spoke in urgent tones, headlines screamed bank collapse imminent, and customers demand answers. Crowds gathered outside branches, chanting, demanding their money back. Furious customers waved printed screenshots of the leaks in the air like protest banners. The government issued statements. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. The CEO, once smug and untouchable, appeared on camera pale and stammering, promising full cooperation. But it was too late. The fire had consumed everything. In the middle of it all, my phone buzzed. A final message from A. "You did it. They're finished. But I can't stay. They're investigating. If they find me, I'm gone. Delete this account. Forget I existed." And, just like that, the shadow who had helped me disappeared into the void. I was alone again. The bank crumbled over the next few days. Lawsuits stacked higher than skyscrapers. Their social media pages were flooded with rage. Employees leaked even more secrets, desperate to save themselves. Customers fled in droves. Rival banks posted welcoming ads, offering free transfers to anyone burned. It was over. I had won. Or had I? Because as the smoke cleared, I felt the ground shifting beneath me. Emails from journalists filled my inbox, asking for interviews. Strangers online speculated about who had dropped the final file. Some even guessed my name. And then, the call came again. The same lawyer, but her voice was colder now. "We know someone helped leak classified information. Whoever it was, they'll regret it." She didn't say my name, but I heard the threat anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the silence, wondering if I'd see flashing lights outside my window. Wondering if I'd gone too far. Because here's the truth no one tells you about revenge. It doesn't stop when you win. It keeps asking, what now? What will you pay for what you've done? The world moved on quickly. The bank filed for bankruptcy within weeks, its name dragged through the mud, its executives disgraced. Customers cheered. Justice had been served. But for me, the victory was hollow. I couldn't shake the paranoia. Every phone call felt suspicious. Every knock at the door made my stomach twist. Even as people online hailed the mysterious whistleblower as a hero, I carried the secret like a weight around my neck. No one knew it was me. And yet, somehow I felt exposed. They thought I would accept silence, but I made sure the world heard my voice. And in the end, the same bank that mocked me was forced to beg for peace. If this story gripped you, don't forget to subscribe for more. Because the next letter I share will shake you even harder.